Okay boys, today we're watching a very interesting video made by Nixium, and I want y'all to put some respect on that man's name because he's been putting out World of Warcraft content for 16 years at this point, which is crazy for me to even think about. Now recently he made a tone shift with his channel and he started uploading more lore videos, and I found those videos to be very interesting, but about a week ago, he uploaded a video called The Death of Immersion and Good Fantasy, which I thought was very intriguing. So I haven't watched any of that, so let's watch this together and see what we think.
In many of my previous World of Warcraft videos, where I talk about underrated villains from classic WoW or zones that put terror into the hearts of the community, I have often used the word enchantment and escapism, and many of you have picked up on this. The fact that often in my writings about classic WoW or MMOs or just role-playing games in general, these two terms tend to escape from my fingers and my lips all too often. And the thing is, many people, when you use these terms around them, they don't actually know what they mean, nor do they realize that these two things are the bedrock foundation of a good fantasy, a good fairy story, or a good role-playing game.
Absolutely. You need to be enchanted by a story to be immersed inside of it. And once you're immersed inside of story, I think, especially when talking about video games, right? You're gonna be hooked. So definitely immersion is a core integral part of video games in my opinion, at the very least, MMORPGs. And I think that that's what most developers today don't understand. They are so focused and tunnel visioned on making good combat or making some sort of a, retention systems and all that trash, but nobody understands that a good story will hook you. People think that most players skip the story, which may be true, but it all depends on how you tell it, because a story is as good as the person who's telling it. That is a core foundation of, storytelling, right? If it's like really long scrolls of text, nobody's gonna read them. But if you scatter them and sprinkle them throughout the entire game, man, it's gonna be good. So it kind of depends on how you tell it. Now, I will say that World of Warcraft, and I'm going to use Classic as a reference because retail is, oh my god, I'm not even going to bother. But Classic did it in, again, the scroll-like text, but this was a different era. It worked back in the day when people actually read all that stuff, especially the notes that could drop and, the scrolls and all that ancient stuff. Now, personally, I love reading this because I'm kind of an old person, if you haven't paid attention. But most new age gamers won't read that. So you kind of need to adapt your way of storytelling, but it doesn't mean that it's not important anymore. So people still need to put an emphasis on that.
So today I want to talk about these two things, why they are so important, and I also want to give special acknowledgement to J.R.R. Tolkien and his very famous essay on fairy stories, which goes into much greater detail on these two subjects, far more than I intend to do in this video.
By the way, it's crazy how pretty much every good story had a foundation that was based on Tolkien-like stories. It's crazy how much inspiration people have drawn from a singular man. That is beautiful to see. I mean, if you read the books, you know that they're divine. I only watched the movies, unfortunately. I still need to read the books of like Lord of the Rings and all this stuff because I know they're expanding on so much of the world, which is incredible. But I've read here and there some parts and they were incredible. The things that I've read were awesome. So yeah, for sure. I completely understand why so many people drew inspiration from him.
Highly recommend you check it out. And perhaps with this video, I can even give a proper definition to a feeling that many of you likely have experienced at some point in your life, but maybe you didn't know the right words on how to describe it. You'll see what I mean.
Interesting.
A long time ago when I was a kid, I went to my grandparents' house up in Kentucky with my mother and father. And while I was there, we briefly went to visit my aunt, and my parents, they left me alone at her house while the adults went and did whatever it is they were doing. Well, I was bored, and I started wandering around her home, wondering on what I could do, until eventually I found her collection of VHS tapes. Yes,
VHS tapes.
And I decided that I was going to watch a movie. I looked through, all the film
Come on, guys. I know you're thinking the same thing that I'm thinking, but okay, I'm not gonna say it. Not gonna say it. Still early on YouTube. I'm not gonna say it.
That she had, and eventually I settled on one, a movie that I had heard was really good, but I had never seen it. I took this movie out of its case, I put it into the VHS player, turned on the TV, and I began to watch The Lord of the Rings.
Oh, God. Oh, okay, it was Lord of the Rings. Thank God.
And you know what? I started watching this movie, and I didn't understand a thing of what was going on. There were some guys like trying to find some two little dudes being carried by some monsters, and two dudes talking to this like weird monster looking creature that they found while out in the mountains. I didn't understand at all what was going on. And eventually I turned the movie off and I said, this is garbage. Well, a little while later...
You know what? It's actually funny. The first time, by the way, just for like your knowledge, generally speaking, Lord of the Rings trilogy is the most favorite movie I've ever had in my entire life. Like, this is my all-time favorite movie, and I watched it fairly recently. I think like 8 years ago, something like that. So, you know, the movie's old relatively, right? So watching it 8 years ago, considered to be, you know, like really weird. Watching it for the first time, right? After so many people have spoken about it. And the first time I watched it with my cousin, I did not enjoy it. I just ended up quitting like midway through. And I didn't get it, which now I understand how much of a mentality shift I had. Because the first time I tried to watch it, it was like, over a decade ago at this point. And I was such a child. Like, my mentality was, it's cringing me just no. Just remembering it just cringes me out of my mind. But basically, the older I became, and I gave it a rewatch, and I actually tried to watch it like a normal functioning human being with an actual frontal lobe, wow, my mind was blown. It was so good. It was the best 4 hours of my life. Like 3-something hours, right? It was so good. It was so good. I would do anything. I would pay any price to rewatch it again. Just literally wipe my memory and let me watch it till the end of my days.
While I was back at home and I was back to school, good. I was riding the bus one day and I was talking to a new friend I had just made whose name was Alan Schmidt. And on this particular morning, I learned that Alan was a really big fan of The Lord of the Rings. And I told him, I said, you know, Alan, I tried watching those movies and I couldn't get into it. Nothing made sense. And
that's crazy. I actually had the opposite thing. This is hilarious.
I just thought it was kind of stupid. And he began to ask me, he was like, how could you say that? Like, what was it about it that you didn't like?
Just started beating him up.
I began to explain the plot that I experienced. And only after a few moments, Alan stopped me and he said, Nixium, your problem is that you watched the second movie, or started watching the second movie, before you watched the first. No wonder you were so confused. No wonder you didn't like it. Well, that Friday, Alan invited me over to his house to spend the night for the very first time, and he said that we were going to watch The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. I got my parents' permission, we went over to his home, I rolled out my sleeping bag in the living room, and we sat down with some popcorn and whatever else, and we started to watch this movie.
Man, imagine having friends in real life, huh? We lost this, boys. We don't have sleepovers anymore, right? We just grunt and we play video games and we watch, like, I don't know, Twitch or YouTube, and then we just fall asleep and do it all over again. What a time to be alive.
And to say that The Lord of the Rings absolutely blew my mind was an understatement.
Wow.
Shortly thereafter, I had watched Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers. A little bit after that, I finished the trilogy by watching Return of the King, and I knew that these 3 films were going to be some of my favorite movies that I had ever watched for the rest of my life. And
crazy.
Turns out I was
Same.
right. And you know, after watching The Lord of the Rings, something came over my younger self, and I didn't really exactly know how to define it. I started going out into the woods, and oftentimes I would pick up a stick and I would pretend to be Aragorn, and I would be fighting orcs, pretending that all the trees that surrounded me were these monsters, Uruk-hai and trolls and so on. In my free time, I was drawing maps of the Shire and what Moria might have looked like.
Whoa, bro, you took it far. Like, I gotta give it to you. Like, yeah, other people just enjoy the film, but yeah, I mean, to be honest, it affected me too, because I couldn't enjoy any other, to this day, I can't enjoy fantasy, like, movies or TV shows without comparing them directly to Lord of the Rings. And it's so unfortunate because they were done so well. Almost nothing can compare. So it's very, very difficult when you're watching like fantasy-based stuff, and then you're like, Lord of the Ring is better, right? It's kind of just, it gave you such a high ceiling, nobody can reach it. And I mean, it is what it is, but it also means that a lot of people need to just raise the bar, right? Because nowadays, when did we ever get? What was the last good fantasy movie that you guys have watched? I'm actually interested. Let me know in the comments. I can't remember anything out the top of my mind, like a movie, TV show, right? Maybe Game of Thrones, but obviously the latest seasons, like Jesus, season 8, oh my god, like hell no. So what was the best fantasy you guys watched? I'm really interested in hearing this.
Like from above, and I dreamed of these far off misty mountains in the distance that I felt like I could almost touch them, but they were just out of reach, like they were just beyond the horizon, and if I just traveled far enough, I would find them. And you know, this feeling, this sense of wonder that the Lord of the Rings gave me, this sense that this was a real place at one point in history, or a real place just hidden behind a veil whose, you know, form I didn't know how to peel back from my eyes. I didn't really know how to describe that feeling, so I just considered myself a fan. And in those days, as I was growing up, I would often use the Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth as a type of happy place, if we want to use that term. I would just go to that corner of my mind and I would fall into Middle-earth and I would escape. And all the troubles of school and girls and friend drama, it would all just fade away for a time.
And that's the beautiful thing about a good story. I say there is a big difference between an enjoyable story and a good one. I think enjoyable story doesn't necessarily mean a good one. I think you can enjoy, let's say, a certain movie and you can say, oh yeah, the story was good. I mean, but you don't really mean it. It was just good for the watch time you had. You didn't feel like you wasted your ticket. But then it's like, okay, it just fades away. A good story lingers. A good story stays inside of you for years on end. And Lord of the Rings, like I mentioned earlier, is one of that. I always use it as an example because it is so goddamn good. And there are so many good like TV shows and animes that I've watched that have lingered with me to this day. At certain moments, at certain time periods, of course, different things bubble up to the surface. Because, you know, as the older you get, you forget a lot of things. But the really good stuff lingers. And that's the difference between a good story and an enjoyable one.
By this point, too.
But a good story will always be enjoyable, in my opinion.
In my life, I was also playing World of Warcraft, which I also found to be very immersive for me. It gave me a very similar experience with all of its different races, with different stories, this huge world of adventure and different landscapes to explore, the music and the ambience. I loved it. And this
the good
game,
old
too,
days.
whenever I would play it when I was younger, it as well filled me with this sense of great imagination, and I would draw pictures of my characters and write simple stories of adventures through the various zones of Azeroth.
I want to cry,
dude. The Lord of the Rings, they were
my
3 favorite movies. And also World of Warcraft had quickly become my favorite video game that I had ever played.
Everyone thought of this. This is insane. Like, look how good everything is inside this game. It was so crazy, and you need to realize that this game came after Warcraft, right? So a lot of the zones that you saw in Warcraft in a completely different video game, you now could walk inside of them in a 3D model, and you could see everything. You could see like the special walls, the texture, all that stuff. You can walk inside of Stormwind. You could do all of that stuff, and this was incredible, right? And I think it reached a peak moment where people actually got to experience Northrend, because this was directly from Warcraft 3: The Frozen Throne, and a lot of people went like, holy, like, this is crazy. I can't believe I'm actually here. And I have a feeling that this is just what we lost in current retail World of Warcraft. Nobody cares about the zones anymore. Zones are just like, they're beautiful, right? I'm not gonna lie. I think most of the zones in retail WoW looks great, but I don't really care about fidelity. I care about the feeling that I get when I'm inside a world. And worlds, unfortunately, right now are just barren wastelands. You just don't have fun. You don't immerse yourself inside a game anymore, and that's due to the nature of the game being so fast paced. People are just walking, flying, jumping, running. Everything happens too fast, especially if you're playing goddamn Demon Hunter, dude. They're like, these guys are fiends. And you just skip the entire process. You kill a creature in 1 second. You can multi-pull and do like a group AoE. And it just sucks. It's just not fun. Back in the day, when you played Classic, it took you like 10 solid seconds to kill a creature when you started a game. And you could appreciate the game a lot more because of it too. Because you had to be way more careful where you walk. You had to take these different routes because you didn't want to face an enemy that can potentially kill you, right? So you had to take the off-beaten path. You had to walk off the beaten path, sorry. And you had all of these dirt roads that sometimes led you to someplace incredible. Maybe a castle, maybe an abandoned shack with an NPC inside of it. But you had to find out and discover the world for yourself. And now everything is so scripted and so fast, you cannot enjoy it anymore. You can't enjoy every single thing, like anything, and you can't immerse yourself inside of this world. And that is what we lost. That is what we truly lost in World of Warcraft. And that is something that I always talk about in every single video that I make. And that's what I think eventually killed World of Warcraft. At least for me.
And you know, as I got older, I started to seek out this undefined feeling in any game that I played or TV show or book that I read.
Wow.
I was looking for these.
It's crazy he's saying exactly the same thing that I have. By the way, I haven't pre-watched this. I swear to God, I haven't pre-watched any of it. But it's just so funny for me to see that, like, us older people that are in our 30s, right? I'm not 30 yet. I'm just getting close to it, unfortunately. I know I'm not bald yet, so it's kind of weird. But yeah, it's so crazy. We all think the same, man. Like, we all think the same.
Stories and adventures and whatever that could capture me in the way that the Lord of the Rings and classic WoW had all those years ago. And I especially sought out these worlds and experiences whenever I went through a period of great stress or sadness or whatever sort of struggle I was going through growing up. Even in my later teenage years, I still didn't know exactly what it was I was looking for. I just enjoyed fantasy as far as I understood things. That was until one day after high school, while I was in college.
And again, that is one... Sorry for pausing all the time, but again, this is very, very true what he was saying right now. So it may not have sounded important, but let me explain. He's saying that he didn't really know what he felt, but he still felt it. Basically, that's what he was saying. And that's exactly why I'm saying that a good story will immerse you inside of a world, and not everything should be explained. I feel like nowadays games and like TV shows and movies are doing all that they can to explain to you what you're seeing. And that is really bad, because when you do that, it's like you're assuming that your audience are a bunch of boglodites, okay? And they can't figure out anything of their own, on their own. And that's why I think a recent TV show that's called Severance has been so successful. Because this TV show, if you watch it, I'm not going to spoil anything for you. By the way, go watch it if you haven't. This TV show actually respects the intelligence of its audience. So it actually gives you problems and it gives you solutions, but it doesn't really tell you anything on the nose. So you have to figure out from all the clues and all the stuff inside. Now, obviously, this is like a way different story because this is fantasy and it's more about the feeling rather than like the mystery. But when it comes to MMORPG, I don't want you to explain to me everything. I don't want you to tell me, oh, this place was like this place was ravaged, this place was, I don't know, like eaten by zombies. I don't care. Just show it to me. Let my mind figure out all the details on its own. That's what I want inside of video games. Nowadays, everyone explains to you, like you see a bunch of like bodies on the ground, and you're like, and a certain NPC tells you like, oh my god, dude, there was this big attack on us, and this exact thing happened, and their commander is this guy, and their chief in charge is like that human over there, like go kill him. Bro, like don't do that. Just literally don't.
I read Tolkien's essay on fairy stories, which finally gave proper words to this feeling that I had experienced while watching Lord of the Rings or playing classic WoW back when I was younger. What I had experienced is what Tolkien would call enchantment and escapism. Now, Tolkien, he describes enchantment as a type of fairy magic in this essay. And it's something that occurs when a person is pulled into a secondary created world, pulled out from our world, which he calls the primary world. Tolkien describes it like a prisoner who is in a cell, who is dreaming of the world outside, the beauty of it all, and what sort of sights and smells and sounds the prisoner might be able to capture with his senses as he perceives the world outside. And all of us, Tolkien would argue at least, have a deep need for this feeling, a deep need for escapism and enchantment. But I'll talk about why in a moment. First of all, I'll say that the act of creating one of these secondary worlds, however, capable of actually producing enchantment in the person who reads it or watches it or plays it in the form of a video game, this is incredibly difficult, especially now.
Yep, and
nowadays, it's a very common criticism that there are so many forms of entertainment out there where the author or the director or the developer, they only care about creating a product that appeals to as many people as possible to make as much money as possible. And so the world and its story and its characters and its immersive quality is just pushed to the side as a secondary or an unnecessary element.
Absolutely. Now, what I was about to add on top of that is that nowadays the people that are writing stories are labubu millennials. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that the people that are writing the current day stories have been bubble wrapped and protected and shielded from the outside world for so long, they have absolutely no idea how to make a good story. Because they have no experience of the outside world, they have no value of the outside world, and to be honest, they just lack common sense. All of their life are based of what they experienced inside of their protected neighborhood with their Karen wine moms that constantly looks over them from their backyard. That's pretty much their entire life experience, and these people are now who writing the story for like those big companies. So you can never have a good story come from a person like that. Unlike Tolkien, who's been a literal soldier in a war, okay? And you can't even start comparing between the two, because one has a ton of real life experience in the most horrible situations known to men, and the other has labubu, and that's pretty much it.
In the production, or in many cases today, we have developers that seem more interested in lecturing.
And by the way, same exact thing goes for video games. Whoever writes the scripts for video games, you can tell they're completely disconnected from the outside world. The lingo that they use, the cringe terms that they think everyone knows about, nobody knows them. In real life, you would get beaten down. So literally, nobody knows them. Nobody. And that's why you see so many bad video games today.
The viewer about a particular issue rather than creating an actual world for that person to fall into and be a part of. I often see people criticizing modern video games for inserting unnecessary political dialogue.
Dude, I haven't pre-watched it. I swear I haven't pre-watched it. That is crazy. He said the exact same thing I've said. That is insane, but it just goes to show you how right this is. Like, this is true. The fact that now these people are trying to hijack every single aspect of our life, we need to push back. We need to push back hard, and we need to vote with our wallets, and we need to say enough's enough, because it has been way too long, and we just gone too far. We need to bring it back. We need to bring it back, boys, to the times where we could have an actual good story.
History,
and I believe we can.
Just
I believe we can. Expedition 33 have blew out of the water completely everyone. Well, I just butchered this sentence, but never mind that. You know what I said. It's crazy. There are good stories popping up, and they're not by AAA companies.
Doing things that are unnecessary that immediately break the enchantment of the game. I can even use World of Warcraft as an example. Now, World of Warcraft, it might not be a game that you yourself play or enjoy, but I think I can use it as an example of what I'm getting at here.
Of course.
When you compare the original game to the modern game, Classic WoW, which is the original game, it's more about discovering a greater world full of stories and diverse peoples and perspectives with no clear objective answer as to who is the most good or most evil, whose ideas or worldview is more superior, and whose are lacking. You have groups like the Forsaken who seek to turn their enemies and even their allies into undead to make everybody just as ugly as they are. Night Elves, they struggle with being in an alliance with younger, lesser races of Azeroth, as they would put it, considering that many Night Elves are thousands of years old. Orcs, they're being led by a war chief who is raised by humans who doesn't even truly understand Orcish traditions and culture. All across Azeroth, there are all these different peoples, all these different conflicts, creating war, creating tension, creating real drama that actually can pull at your heartstrings, make you think, or allow you to be more immersed into the world as you insert yourself into greater conflicts.
And it's crazy how good each clan story was, right? Like each race, sorry, I called it a clan for some reason, but like the Horde on its own, like what, it was so good. It was filled with lore, like backstabbing, power grabbing, right? Everyone fought for the throne, and there was so much to it. Like even Garrosh and Crane fighting, right? That was incredible with, I believe it was Magatha that poisoned Garrosh blade, and he killed Crane in a very how do I use the word for it? Like, it was a very bad taste, right? I mean, he essentially poisoned him, but he didn't intend to do so. So he, if I'm not mistaken, just killed Magatha, right? I'm not, again, the lore is very old, so I'm pretty sure that's the gist of it. And it was crazy, right? It was so good. It was comprised of small stories such as this that actually mattered. Well, this specifically wasn't like a small story, but there were so many smaller stories, as in, like, to give us a good example. I mean, you can get Mancrick's wife, which is one of the most common ones, and one of the most memed ones for sure. But it just goes to show, like, how insane it was, right? You find a wife, and then he tells you, like, bro, kill boars, squeal boars, right? Quill boars, sorry, I called them kill boars because you killed them, but yeah, it's like, dude, quill boars killed my wife. Okay, go butcher everything. Like, everyone you see in sight, go kill them. And you do that. And that was just a raw emotional quest. It was so good. And nowadays you don't have it. Now all they try to do is make you feel like you're the hero. You're the one who's saving the world. Every single expansion, by the way, without exception. Like, every expansion has a world-ending event that only you, Chief, can prevent. Crazy, huh? Like, so good. And yeah, I mean, Blizzard still don't understand why their well went dry. And, it's just funny for me to see, but all we have to do is just point fingers and laugh at them. That's pretty much all we have left.
And all I gave you is just 3 examples of 3 small groups in this massive world of stories and adventure. And now compare that to the game today. Today, we have the Draenei race and the Orcs. They are working together to defeat Xal'atath, the current primary antagonist, despite the fact that the Orcs nearly wiped out the entire Draenei race from existence in a mass genocide event. The evidence of which is the Path of Glory in Hellfire Peninsula. These are the bodies of all the men, women, and children the Orcs killed all across Draenor, and yet for some reason, it's as if the Draenei no longer care. Night Elves, I mentioned them before, they have now accepted mages into their ranks. Now keep in mind, back in the day, you couldn't play as a Night Elf mage, and why? Because for 10,000 years in the lore, these people have had a deep distrust of arcane magic due to it being the reason that the world was sundered and broken into the continents that you see here. And it was because of arcane magic that the Burning Legion was first able to enter Azeroth, almost plunging the entire world into demonic corruption and death. It's why the Night Elves are so druidic in the first place rather than magical arcane users like they used to be. 10,000 years of no tolerance in their society towards the arcane. However, all that lore is gone simply because the consumer wants to play a Night Elf mage. And so now all that established lore that was built up over many...
And I believe you can, since Cataclysm, right, you can play Tauren as a priest, which I always thought was an abomination and very unholy. And I'm not saying this like unironically, like literally this is why in God's name you play as a holy cow. Like stop that chief. But regardless, he's completely right. These things are completely immersion breaking. Just because the player wants something doesn't mean that you need to sacrifice the immersion for it. Now, there's always, whenever you build a game that has like a really important story, there's always this discussion when you make it a certain decision if you should break immersion for gameplay. And I believe that Jeff Kaplan was the one who spoke about it like many years ago back in the day when he worked on World of Warcraft. We can watch this video on a different occasion, by the way. Like I'll definitely make a video about that. But basically, he responded to someone asking him why bosses aren't acting like they're actually trying to kill you. So why bosses aren't targeting a healer first, for example, because that's what would make most sense. And Jeff basically told him, listen, we have the knowledge, we have the technology, we can easily do that. The reason we don't do that is because in this case, immersion will break the fun of the game. So at this particular example, yes, you sacrifice immersion, like the boss is acting dumber in a sense, but it makes the game more fun. Because if the boss were to target a healer first, so imagine you playing a healer, right? That's what he said. It's just straight up trash. But yeah, I mean, you will suffer, right? Because you have scarce healing, you need to play more healers, and that would be not really good for the game overall. So in this particular example, like for this, this particular example, it actually just goes to show you that yes, they preferred gameplay over immersion. But in many cases, I believe that they should have sided with the immersion part, because it is always like it is always more fun to play an immersive game rather than to get into the technicalities. And I believe unlocking certain classes, like giving certain races certain classes, was a bad decision making for sure. So I mean, yeah, it's just bad. It's the same reason why I don't like private servers where you can play anything. And I mean, it is what it is, man. I mean, we kind of have to accept it because Blizzard has already made those decisions, but it still was really bad. People don't really get it at a time because they thought, oh, I get to play my race with my favorite class. But no, overall, it was bad.
Many years, books, quests, and stories, it all doesn't matter now. Or we can just be very broad with it. How about how every expansion is all about how all the people of the world just need to come together as a big family,
exactly,
to quote the Dragonflight expansion, to defeat the next big nobody cares villain. Now, it is true that since the days of Warcraft 3,
Arthas did nothing wrong. There you go. I just wanted to say that. Why I wanted to say that? Because it's goddamn true.
The World of Warcraft universe has always kind of been about these different factions uniting to fight a common threat. And yet, over the years, as the various races of Azeroth have lost their unique identity, the story that Blizzard Entertainment created that used to move and inspire and immerse so many,
Bro,
it's
what
just
the hell
been
are these
watered
characters?
down to a very generic story that serves only to waste your time, rather than present to you an actual world of many peoples to fall into. At least in my opinion. Friends, it is a...
And also, World of Warcraft used to be way more like gray. It wasn't as black and white as it is today. Because nowadays you just have your Disney villain at the top and like, I'm gonna kill all of you, and everyone like, oh, we need to come together and fight this monstrosity or we're cooked. And every expansion is like the same thing. So it's lost its flavor by this point, and I think that people love gray characters because there's so much to go on. And just these black and white characters are so boring, man. It's like Blizzard assumes that we're 8-year-olds, which is crazy. And you know what? That may be the reason why they Disneyfied everything and the game looked too cartoonish right now. It lost all manliness, right? I don't know why I'm confusing my words, by the way, so much. Maybe it's because it's so late at night, but I mean, yeah. The game has been Disneyfied to a point. It's been childish. Look at this. I mean, it looks garbage, right? If you go to retail and you see that, none of it seemed frightening. Back in the day, you looked at a creature and you're like, what the hell is that? Like, bro, undead used to be scary. You looked at an undead and it made sense. Now you see undead and the females look hot. And that's weird, because it should have been the case. It used to be only Sylvanas' case. But no, even I think Sylvanas was a banshee, right? If you go to Classic, she's a banshee. Like, she's revolting. But no, they made everything weird. And that's just unfortunate, man. Because we lost all of this immersion, and now stuff won't make sense.
Criticism that exists not just in World of Warcraft, but in many game universes, many television shows, many books, and many films. So many universes that we used to delight in have been degraded to nothing more than teenage tier soap operas rather than actual rich fantasy. And you want to know why? Because so many creators all around the world have lost their sense of creating enchantment and escapism. Now, I know that some of you are probably going to ask, how?
Because instead of trying to make you escape to a different world, they're trying to bring you into theirs. And that's what I think is the most problematic thing, is they're not trying to build a world that is outside of you and ours, like, and their scope. They're trying to bring you inside of their twisted version of what the world should be. And that is revolting, because they have absolutely no idea what to think. And they're just, you know, I'm not going to say it here. I don't want to get banned, but you can pretty much assume what am I going to say. Like, it is absolutely horrifying.
To create good enchantment or escapism in a game or a movie or whatever. And that is something I'd love to talk about, but probably in a separate video. If that's something that you guys would like to see, just leave a comment down below. But I know there's also probably a lot of you sitting there thinking, who cares? I mean, after all,
the who cares argument has been completely void of any meaning for some time now. It is crazy for me that people are still saying who cares. Like, bro, oh my god, you're still talking about World of Warcraft? Like, I literally get these comments to this day. Like, oh, why are you talking about retail so much? Like, why do you care, bro? Don't play. Who cares? Like, I enjoy it. Bro, of course I care. I want this game to be good as it once was. I'm annoyed whenever I see a bad patch Blizzard put out, because it legitimately frustrates me. Because if they would make Classic Plus, I would be a happy camper, if they do it the right way, of course. But if they're not gonna provide me that, just give up the IP to someone who's actually capable of doing so, and let the game go. Just create your own game. The reason that you take a horse that is already beaten dead to this point and trying to constantly revive him, it just goes to show that you're incapable of creating something new and something fresh. And yeah, I mean, to be fair, the horse isn't even beaten dead to this point. It just straight up reduced to atoms. And I said this before, and I say it again, it's trash. It's just garbage. And I hate every single ounce of every human being who tells me, who cares? It just frustrates me, man. Because of course I care about the game that I love being butchered to the ground. World of Warcraft is the best MMORPG I've ever played in my entire life, and I had no alternative leaving it. So I'm just dead in the water. I'm just playing weird games. I'm just playing different games nowadays. I don't play an MMORPG, which is my favorite genre, and that's frustrating me. I'm just mad. I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm angry, but I have to just face reality. Because if the choice is playing a worse version of what I used to have of a game that I loved, then I'd rather play nothing at all. And that's just reality.
This sort of stuff, the falling into one's imagination, some of you think it seems very childish and naive, pointless. It's something that many people condemn because they see escapism and enchantment as being simple distraction, not real, pointless, a waste of time. This is something Tolkien talks about very extensively in his essay. Let's return to Tolkien because I mentioned before that he discussed in his essay that escapism and enchantment, they are necessary to our lives. And in fact, it is one of the purest art forms that one can experience. And let me explain to you why.
Imagine people telling you that all the something that has been existing since the dawn of men is not important for you. Like, no, you don't need escapism. You don't need that, brother. You need to face reality. You need to stay grounded. Bro, what? Like, everyone needs escapism. Everyone wants that happy little window that they can walk off to and just enjoy the moment. These things are important. They make you happy, they make you feel good, and they pass the time. So why in God's name would someone tell you who cares about that? That is actually the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life, and anyone who thinks like that, you're despicable.
Why
Straight
do we
up.
need stories like The Lord of the Rings that can capture the imaginations of young boys and girls all around the world? Why is it such a big deal that so many of the worlds and the stories that we are creating today are lacking in enchanting and escaping quality? Let me put it this way. Most of you, according to my analytics behind the scenes here on YouTube, most of you are men. Men between the age of 25 and 35.
No!
Gentlemen, let me speak to you as one of you. Sometimes life is kind of a bitch. Life is hard. Life is cruel sometimes. It's rugged, it's not clean. And as we wrestle with the responsibilities of our jobs or taking care of our family or dealing with the cesspit of negativity that pollutes social media these days, sometimes we just need a break from the pursuit of higher career advancement or just our jobs, whatever it is. We need rest. And there is silence to be found in a church, or comfort to be found in the company of a cigar lounge, or maybe just taking a hike in the forest can be very relaxing. But then there is another place where we can find rest, all of us, not just men, and that is in enchantment. For it's in that moment that we are captured by the fairy story, as Tolkien would put it. In the moment that we're captured by that world, we are reminded of so much, like the beauty of our world, the primary world, and man's capacity for virtue. And even sometimes the mundane becomes wondrous in its quality. The hero, he inspires us to be something greater than what we already are. In him, we see the capacity for bravery in a man, even in the most impossible of challenges. The beautiful maiden, so fair that her very gaze, it captures us and inspires a delight in the writing of poetry and the singing of songs, these sad attempts at communicating the love that we have for her mere presence alone.
I loved what he said here. This was wow. I couldn't pause for a second. I was just hooked. This was such a great line. I love this. He's absolutely right. These type of stories, as humans, inspires us. We strive to be better, and we watch all of these characters, and some of them eventually become our heroes. And some of the villains we may be wary of, right? And, because they're based like on real features. But some of the gray characters, I think why most people are connected to them is because most people are like gray, right? Nothing is black and white almost when it comes to personalities. And I think that's the beauty of it. I think that these stuff inspire us. Whenever we see a hero make a decision that we think is, oh, look, it's bad, but no, it had some good idea behind it, right? Like the road to hell is paved with good intentions and all that stuff. We can reflect on stuff that we have done in our past and be like, oh, I had a similar moment to this, and maybe we'll face our creatures, right? We'll face our fears, and we understand that we grow out of stories. So it's not like all of these stories are just stories and that's it. No, they inspire us, they change us, and they make us learn and grow. Some of them, right? The good ones, for sure. And, they teach us of friendship, of love, all of these great things. So to say that a story is just a story and that's it, I think that is the dumbest thing ever. And it is no, like just no. It is not true at all. I think Nixium hit the nail on the head there. And what an amazing line, dude. I loved everything he said in the past like 20 seconds. It was amazing.
We
For sure.
see the mountains of a world that we cannot touch. We can hear songs of elves that we do not see. We can experience the whisper of gods seated upon high thrones. And suddenly, without even realizing it, we find ourselves hiking in the nearby woods, searching behind hills for secret doors into dwarven halls that stretch for miles beneath the earth. And perhaps some of you guys will laugh because, after all, none of this is true. And maybe you're right. But in the quiet corner of our spirits, whose door we keep
What
shut
is real?
to the outside world due to embarrassment and our fear of ridicule, a small piece of us, those of us who have experienced enchantment and who have escaped into fantastical worlds, there is this small piece of us that truly wants to believe that somewhere out there, hidden in a place that man has never walked, there is a place where fantasy comes to life in our primary world.
Bro, recently I've seen what women read, and I can tell you, none of them can talk to me about what I call a good fantasy, okay? Let's just say that.
And I would say that it's this
They can
longing
judge
for
me.
enchantment, this longing for escape into a secondary world for a time, just to give us reprieve from the woes and stresses and heartaches of this world. That's why we're so drawn to the Dungeons and Dragons table, rolling dice and immersing ourselves into a world that a group of friends have created together to go exploring within. And maybe that's why we dress up and we go to Renaissance fairs, or we put on the armor of our ancestors and we fight on battlefields, letting ourselves fall into the fantastical and romantic realm of the past, or of elves and gods and heroes. And in a curious way, that enchantment that we experience as we don the armor and we pick up the sword or the spear, somehow it manifests itself into the primary world. And suddenly our art galleries are filled with these beautiful paintings of fairies and spirits. Our wardrobe consists of tunics and swords and wizard staffs, and just for the delight of it all, because it's in enchantment and escapism that for a brief moment, we leave who we are and what we know behind, and we rest. And then we return.
By the way, look over there.
Restored, as Tolkien
You can
put
see.
it. Restored with a new appreciation for even the most simple and ordinary things. The world, it's bright again and full of color like when we were children. The rustle of the leaves, it's like a language that only the most learned of poets can understand. And although we must endure the doldrums of our days, our world feels more wondrous, because the secondary world of enchantment that we fell into reminds us of just how beautiful life truly is. I admit, everybody, I'm not reading off a script. I'm just rambling from the heart
What?
right now, trying to describe something that Tolkien
No
did
way.
a far better job at communicating than I ever could. I'll just say that when it comes to good fantasy and role-playing
That's crazy.
games, whether it's a video game or even a D&D campaign, if you're a DM, you want to create escapism. Speaking as a DM, actually, a creator myself of a secondary world, I've been doing a homebrew campaign for a very long time now. I want my players to be enchanted when they play my game. I want my characters and lands and stories and magic and encounters to really move them in a way, to make them think, to make them wonder, to leave them a little bit in awe. And when we're at the table, I want them to be truly immersed, and I want them to be able to escape into the world that, yes, I have made as the DM, but that they are helping to create. I want the table to be a place of rest for them before they have to go back to work on Monday. And that's my goal anyway. That's my goal as a DM. It's my goal whenever I am playing a video game or watching a movie or whatever. I'm always seeking that enchantment. I'm always seeking that sense of escapism. And it's why I talk about it so much when it comes to gaming. It's why immersion is so important to me. So speaking to game developers out there or any sort of creator that makes secondary worlds, if the goal of immersion, if it is just cast aside in the favor of achievement points and meaningless grinds and pointless collecting, or for you just making an entire show or movie or book just so that you can make a statement, not to immerse, but to just appease your own ego and your own insecurity with the way things are, I don't think that you're creating a world that enchants. You're not creating a world for people to escape into. I think you're just creating a big waste of time.
Ooh, wow. Wow. This was the best World of Warcraft video I've watched in recent times. It was great. These 22 minutes went by like nothing. I actually made a video into a 50-minute video, so I'm not gonna ramble for too long. I pretty much said everything that I wanted to say. But my god, I'm gonna leave a link in the description. You guys can watch this video for yourself. Give this guy an immediate like and a sub because he's amazing. I love Nixium, man. He's incredible, and my god, this video was a delight to watch.